All right. Welcome to another expert interview. Always love doing these because I love meeting new people, love hearing new stories. It's been fun getting to know Nick kind of behind the scenes for the last few minutes and just understanding where he's coming from. Before we jump in, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go below, like, subscribe, comment. If you have questions, let us know. We're going to talk about some topics that you probably have questions about. So with that, let's jump right in. Nick, why don't you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Nick Gumpert with REMAX Top Producers. So residential real estate is my space, specifically in the San Gabriel Valley, down the 210 corridor. For those of you in SoCal, you know exactly where that is. For those of you not, again, San Gabriel Valley is Southern California. Think of Pasadena. That's the biggest magnet, I think, that people can draw to and say, yep, know where that is. So like I said, in residential real estate, specialize working with first-time home buyers, those that are relocating into the area from out of the city or out of the state, and 1099 workers. And then even better, if they want to transact within crypto. That's a new space that I've educated myself on, created a team around me to help facilitate those opportunities and where they may lie.
Love it, man. Well, thanks for taking some time. Like I said, I'm super stoked we got connected, and give us a little background. So why real estate? Like, why'd you end up in the real estate market?
Yeah, I would say three reasons. One, for my son. He was unborn at the time, but when my wife told me she was pregnant, that made me rethink, okay, I need to take the salary cap off and put myself in a space to provide for my family, to allow my wife and I to work just one job. That was a big driver for me, as well as, to be honest, to be an example for him, to be an example that you can be successful in one space, shift, and make it somewhere else. So that was a big driver for me. Number three, make more money. I think we all want to make more money. And I think we all want to make more, to have more, to do more, to be more, to give more. And to be honest, for me specifically, I want to be a bigger player in the philanthropic world, and giving back to my community. So for example, one thing that I do after each transaction, I help someone either help sell or buy a home. I sponsor a youth registration within my community. So that's a space that I take a lot of pride in because I was a beneficiary of that growing up. I had opportunities to go abroad, but that wasn't because my parents were rich. That was because we found individuals, I feel like, similar to myself, like-minded, that said, I want to be able to give back as well, and that concept of pay it forward. So those are my big three drivers: make more, to give more, allow my wife and I to work just one job, and be that example for my son.
Love it, man. I love that you have that dialed in and that you understand your why. You know, so often people jump, and especially in the entrepreneurial world, which guys, like mortgage, real estate, insurance, these are entrepreneurial endeavors, right? You can control your income, which means you can eat top ramen or you can eat a filet. It's up to you, right?
Yep.
So, but I love that you have clarity in your why, and that was instant. As soon as I asked Nick offline, like, why, like, he just knows, like, he knows, and it's not this fake knowing, it's this real, like, no, this is why I'm doing it. I love that you're giving back to youth. I have a big heart for youth entrepreneurship, so I love pouring there. I love that you're looking at the athletic side of it. So let's talk through, when we were talking, like, you can relate to people because you've had success with real estate and doing some stuff there. So let's talk about that. Like, what has real estate done for you that you then want to share with others?
Yeah. So got involved in 2009. I think I was about 24 at the time. Coaching, didn't think of it as a long-term play for myself, other than I just wanted to get in at the time. So you're talking about 2009, things were cheap, they were low, right? It was, gosh, really middle of the bubble of sorts, of properties going in foreclosure. So it's timing, as so much of what we do and why we do it, how we got involved in it. It's timing for so much of it, of course. And for me, it became affordable at that time, even being single, like I said, in the coaching space. So I think that's an interesting one, like I said, that I can relate to, is 1099 workers, because I got into my first place is doing that exact thing, being a 1099 worker, a soccer coach, and just positioning myself financially and just saving. And as you alluded to, it's like you can grind as much as you want. What are you going to sacrifice to get, right? And I had no issue eating PB&J and doing some ramen for a number of years. I didn't care. I was single, but I knew that it was to afford myself an opportunity to take advantage of. So bought my first condo in 2009. And at that time I was able to gut it. Had some awesome blue carpet. I was in there for about 25 years.
Perfect.
So had an uncle, my parents helped tear the floors out, redo the cabinets. Had some friends because I was a soccer coach that, hey, Nick, I can help you do the cabinets and do the countertops. So that was brilliant to lean on those individuals because I helped their kids. So that was 09. Then 2014, wanted to make another move in real estate. So I brought up the conversation with my parents. Hey, would you be interested in going 50-50 into a townhome? That specific property was a foreclosure. So we were able to get that a little bit cheaper than what most were paying for market value based on it wasn't turnkey ready. There again, we were in a position for us to gut it. So I was able to live in the condo, gut that townhome, put our fingerprints all over it. And then it just became a rental once I moved out to California in 2015. So therein lies, right, in real estate, situations of if you have multiple properties, how are you going to maintain them? So it's like a brilliant idea. She's like, oh, I want 7 properties. Okay, what are you going to do with them, right? Are they in state, out of state? Are you manning them? Are you doing a property manager? So for me personally, I manned the condo because it was like a mile from my townhome. So that was easy enough. And then when I moved out to California in 2015, leaned on my parents. They were willing to help me out with the condo, but then we had a property management company with the townhome to help facilitate there. So I think those are always the behind the scenes that you have to address, right? As a property owner, owning multiple properties, of how do I make sure it sustains its value and it doesn't get run down, right? Because I think a lot of people get deterred by real estate because they hear the horror story, right? The one-offs that those are exceptions to the rule a lot of times, I feel like, more than they are the norm. Or unfortunately, it's naive, right? And it's just not knowing, and because they didn't ask questions, maybe of someone who has been there, done that. So that's my first 2 properties. And then in 2020, there again, turn in the market, similar to 09, everything froze with COVID, right? And my wife and I, we got our wedding called off for the second time in 2020. Her mind shifted from wedding to house. And it's like, Nick, what if we had our reception in a backyard and we got a house? And it's like, great, we're in Southern California, we need a house. Like, it's expensive. Devin, within 4 days, we looked for a house, we're under contract, got it accepted. Like, that doesn't happen in Southern California. Again, timing is everything, but we needed COVID to call off our wedding 2 times, to then reshift, me leverage the equity in my townhome, use that as a down payment for our home here. And nobody was looking at houses. Everybody froze. The industry froze. So right place, right time. The family was already in escrow, the one selling the house that we're currently in, and they needed somebody who could move. And we were in a position to make a move. So that's my story personally within real estate, and why I feel like I can relate to that first-time home buyer, or for that person moving from one state into SoCal, to say, hold on, I want to be in Pasadena. Yeah, there's more to Southern California than just Pasadena. There's a lot of great communities in and around that I think people just don't know about, right? Not that they don't like it, they just never heard of it. So
that's awesome, man. I love it. Again, I love it. I love hearing your story because, again, I feel like, and I always bash on consultants. So I bash on consultants because I have permission, right? Like, I don't want to work with a consultant who has no tangible experience in what I'm trying to work with, because if we hit a point in business growth or a challenge that they haven't navigated only through a textbook, then they can only help so much, right? I know you've got your entrepreneurship degree. It's the same thing. Like, you can only do so well in business until it kicks you in the face, and and then you got to navigate, right? So I love hearing, like, being a business owner or a 1099 and then purchasing real estate, super tricky. There's some complexities there and things that you might now be able to advise someone on because you had to deal with it. How you renovate and, like, bringing people together to get more value out of a property that might not be ideal, but could turn into something that you're very comfortable with. And then what the before and after is, that there's value there. Managing properties. I'm glad you brought that up. Like, maybe buying that townhouse or condo is a good first purchase if it becomes part of your long-term portfolio. Leveraging equity to purchase not a forever home for you in SoCal, I'm sure, but like to purchase a nice family house that you're going to grow into. Like, all of those things, now you can sit down with someone and say, like, hey, I've been there. And when the emotions hit you in the process, I can help and I can relate. Plus I can throw resources at you and guidance on, like, hey, I remember this moment. Let me tell you what I did wrong. Let me tell you what I did right.
100%.
That's
So
awesome, man. Well, let's talk crypto. I know that was kind of the headline on the introduction when we got connected. So, I mean, we talked, I see these social media videos with guys going out and buying Lamborghinis and Ferraris using their crypto portfolio. We were even talking about like leveraging against crypto. So there's some interesting stuff in the crypto space. And it sounds like you've equipped yourself to be part of these conversations. So I guess talk to me about crypto and real estate. Give me kind of the synopsis.
Sure. Yeah, I think one way to preface this is it's so new that there's not a lot of well-defined answers to say this is exactly how it works and is going to work, right? So I think it's fair to say it's shifting. So people need to just be prepared that new opportunities and new regulations are going to come into play. I speak regulations because California just announced, if it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before, that they want to be the first state to regulate cryptocurrency as a norm. So not just real estate specific. So with that being said, in real estate, being newer in this space, I feel like it was important for me to find what is it that is my target, what's my ideal client look like? And I feel like crypto's it for me, not only, but one of the things, because I love learning new things. I love learning about new things, what's coming up, but then being consistent within that space. So what I've chosen to do is get certified within the space from a company that's kind of all-inclusive within the crypto space right now called Proppy. Got certified through them. And certification really means nothing if you do nothing with it, of course, and it doesn't guarantee you anything. Yeah, I think the best thing it does for you is it gives you the tools to at least speak and understand that language to help facilitate. And then immediately after that, I created relationships with a couple lenders, an escrow company, to make sure I was positioning myself as not just someone who's, hey, I'm certified in crypto. What questions do you have? It's, Nick, can you help me? And I can confidently say right now, as of today, yes, I can help you. You want to buy a home on Manhattan Beach, and as you alluded to, leverage, not sell off your Bitcoin, I can help you facilitate that. You want to get into Pasadena because you want to be by the Rose Bowl? I got you. So, yep, it's exciting. And I guess my last thing there is then I want to share that information. So I don't just want to keep it here. I've started creating content on YouTube to say, what is blockchain? Why is that important within the cryptocurrency space? Heard of that term? What is it? Smart contracts. How do those work? So I like to also share those pieces because that's, I think, the best way to be successful in anything is not just keep it all to yourself, put it out there and see what sticks.
Love that. I love that you talk about blockchain and smart contracts because that's not the leveraging crypto part, but that's the foundation, and it's going to change every industry, right? And I don't think people understand, even people who think they understand probably don't understand the full impact, but contracts are going to change, right? Like how we execute contracts is changing. And it's going to speed the process up. It may eliminate some people in the process. So that's why there's some tension to execute, right? Because when a whole piece of the puzzle disappears because technology solves it, there's going to be pushback. So it's interesting. And I would say, yeah, give Nick a follow to make sure you're seeing what he's putting out content wise. And then you're educating yourself. You mentioned that you were just at an event that was about NFTs and crypto, correct?
Correct. Yep. On Wednesday, made a trek out to Hermosa Beach. It's kind of funny because there again, I was just online saying what events are coming up in SoCal that I can attend. And I saw that and I registered for it. And I was introducing myself to a few individuals and they're just like, what are you doing down here from Monrovia? Because everybody was from Manhattan Beach, Long Beach, and just in that space. And if they thought it was a little odd, but nonetheless, they're just like, welcome, because good for you. So yeah, love it. I love relearning things because one thing that's always stuck with me, if you don't like change, you're going to like being irrelevant even less. And I think that's we have to do it. So.
That's awesome. So do you have one or two tips for, I guess let's hit the categories and maybe just give me one tip. So for that 1099 worker or that self-employed person, like what's a tip or some fear, just some takeaway that they can have when it comes to real estate?
When it comes to real estate, you have options. And I think those options come from asking professionals, leaning on professionals like myself to figure out what those options are. Because you're a 1099 worker, there's not a one option that fits all, that's all encompassing to say you need to do it this way. It's a matter of what does your situation look like, and let's start taking back those layers and having this conversation so we can best facilitate and help you. Is that getting you prepared in 6 months, or is it going to maybe take over a year? nonetheless, you have to plan and then you have to prepare. So that would be my one thing with 1099s is there are options. And I just think too many come to that mental block of, well, I can't do it because I'm in marijuana, I think is a massive industry that banks don't want to deal with some of those clients. And it has a negative bias, I think, from a societal standpoint. I think that's an interesting space specifically to say, how is someone that works in that industry who wants to write off so much and has a hard time finding support, how do they navigate real estate? So
I love that advice, man. I love that advice of you never know, right? When I bought my first house, I was sitting down with a real estate friend who was probably the first like business person that I met. And I remember he's looking at me, he's like, well, when are you buying real estate? And I'm like, I can't buy real estate. I just started a business. And he's like, well, who says? And I'm like, I just can't. I just started a company. And he's like, well, why don't you go talk to a lender? I talked to a lender the next week and I moved into a new house 30 days later, we moved into the new house. So had I not been open to having that conversation, I would have still lived in that thought process of it's not possible. So I love that advice, guys. If you are curious, then just go ask the question. It doesn't cost any money to talk to a realtor or a mortgage lender. Costs nothing, right? Go talk to them. They can give you a plan, tell you, hey, we can go today, or no, here's what you need to do to be ready. And then once the mortgage guy tells you, here's your number, go, then the realtor can get to work, right? But again, you got to have the conversation so you actually know what's true and what's false.
Absolutely. That was going to be my one question for you was, hey, Devin, how much did that conversation cost you talking to that lender?
Nothing, right? And that's the thing. I didn't actually know that. As a first-time buyer, I'm so used to spending money on stuff, and I think that professionals cost money. Guys, that's the interesting part is in real estate, the transaction takes care of the professionals, right? You might, like if you're selling or buying, you may have to cover inspections and some of these other things, but like the core cost is around the transaction. So the learning part and the getting ready to buy, there's no cost there.
Yep.
So love that. What about crypto? What's one takeaway there, or something interesting you've learned, or a scenario you've seen, or something there to think about?
I think the fact that you don't have to sell your crypto investment in order to use those funds. I think that's the most interesting thing I've come across recently. You touched on it earlier of the idea of leveraging it. So what's norm right now, again, this may change, of course, in the years to come. Someone can withdraw in around 60 to 70% loan to value of what their crypto is worth and use that, again, to get into real estate. With that being said, what is currently the norm from a payback period is 6 to 12 months. So someone who's navigating that space trying to leverage, know that you don't have a 5-year plan, so plan accordingly. Nonetheless, you have options. So that would be my most interesting takeaway recently for those of you in cryptocurrency world. Say, do I have to sell? No, you don't have to. So something to be aware of.
What about relocating? It's a hot topic right now. I mean, it's interesting because you relocated the other direction, right? There's so many people moving out of California. I know I'm seeing them up in Northern Nevada. I know my uncle's in Rancho Cucamonga. He's selling right now and he's moving to Austin, Texas. So we are in a mode where people are moving and some are moving in, some are moving out. What's kind of a takeaway on that relocation when it comes to, when you should buy a house or what that process looks like?
Yeah. I get asked question often, is now a good time to buy? We've only had 2 times in our history, since World War II anyway, that homes have depreciated. Yes, you have the mid 2000s and you had a slight bump down in the early 90s. That's it. So if you can buy now and you can relocate, like I think the key questions then become, where would you live if you can? Maybe you're in that remote work. Where would you want to live? What's your preference? And figure out what's important to you and why it's important to you. I think a lot of people will just piggyback. Well, they moved to Idaho and I heard that's popping, so I want to go to. Hold on. What do you want your lifestyle to be like for the next 5 to 7 years? Right? Did you just have kids move out that you want to not even downsize, but right size for your preferences and what you want your lifestyle to be like? Is your family growing? In which case, again, what are your preferences? Do you want to be close to the beach? Do you want to be out away from the vast majority of the people? Again, these are all preferences that I think take time to think in low stake environments so you can make quick, confident decisions in high stake environments. And that's something that I pride myself on when I'm working with prospective buyers is what are you going to do? For example, what are you going to do if there's a mismatch in price? if you cap out at 600,000 and that home that you really wanted is 650,000, what are you going to do? Are you willing to drive a little bit farther? Are you willing to cut out some of those amenities to say, I'm going from a 3-bed to a 2-bed, right? Do you have a family or friend that can come in on the back end that you say, hey, they said they're good for it. I got that in my back pocket if I need it. Again, that's a low pressure situation that I put them in. So when it comes time, and if they find that, there's like, okay, I know what move I can make, and I can move it quick, versus having to think in the moment. You don't rationally think through things, and now you play that woulda, coulda, shoulda card, saying, damn, if I would have known that Uncle Jerry was there, I could have got in that, right? Or if I knew my friend was also wanting to get in the game, but he didn't want to get all the way in it, that closes some doors, and that you always play that card. So that's some tips to say, put yourself in low stake environments so you can make quick, confident decisions in high stake environments.
I love that. And I love that you talked about, like, you got to understand a city, because there's more to Pasadena than Pasadena. There's more to LA than LA. LA is hundreds of communities.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So if you're moving to a new community and you don't have a ton of exposure there, like, a realtor is going to be your best friend, because they can give you the lay of the land on, like, hey, you want to work here, your commute is this way. By the way, you're not going to want to commute from this neighborhood to this city because of the traffic flow. But if you lived in this neighborhood, the traffic flow is great. By the way, this neighborhood, great schools, lower value, great play. Like, they know the things about new markets you don't know, right? They understand flow. They've been in the market. So leverage them if you're looking at a new market. It's a great way to learn quick.
Yes. Great way to learn quick. And I think now that we are where we are with technology too, is leverage professionals and agents where you can. With that being said, the internet has flattened so many boundaries. So I think even use professionals more specifically to create clarity around all the information. I think there's so much noise to say, well, this is important and that's important. A, what's important to you? What are your preferences? Is it the school system? Is it the proximity? I don't want to live in my car, so I need something that's 15-minute commute time. Those are going to drive your decisions, so you don't have that buyer remorse saying, dude, this hour and a half is killer, but you got more house. Yeah. Right.
And I love a couple of times you've talked about preferences, right? And this is something we were talking about, like, when I do college presentations and I'm talking to younger people, is like, hey, you should start looking at real estate. But I think so many people get stuck in the decision-making process because they haven't planned.
Yep.
And I know it's interesting, I sat down with my fiance and we're just dating, we're going to go buy a property. And before we jumped in, I said, look, we got to create the hit list. Like, what's the must-haves?
Yep.
What's the wishes? What's the bonuses? Like, what part of town? Like, let's get a hit list. And then when we're looking, yeah, there's an emotional part of, does the house feel right? Like, it has to, right? It's got to feel right if you're going to live in it.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, like, we're able to look at a house and be like, no, too chopped up, walk back out the door, right? Or walk in a house and be like, wait a second, this is starting to check a whole lot of boxes. And I mean, we went and looked at houses one day, we put an offer in, it was accepted the next day, and we closed 5 days later, because we knew exactly what we were looking for. There was no hemming and hawing. We as couple didn't have to debate. Like, we knew exactly what our hit list was.
Yep. And on that note, there again, it's trying to weave your way through all this information that you have thousands of options. For people to say, God, there's no inventory. Well, A, it's moving so fast. That's really the issue. It's not that there's none. And B, when there are options, how do you pick the one? And I think too many people get too sidetracked with the perfect house. A, there is no perfect house. I know of people who've built their house from the ground up and then still bitch about it. It's like, oh, I totally would have done the island different. I would have totally used a different flooring. Like, you'll always find something wrong with something. So when you're trying to decipher, a process that I personally use, I dub it as the funnel process. Instead of trying to find the perfect house, let's first look at all our options and then funnel out the ones we know we don't want. What we'll be left with are the ones that we feel like may work. And now you can start figuring out through your preferences again, based on, okay, we've got 16 left. How do we get that down to 3 or 4? Right. And now, again, there's clarity to make quick, confident decisions and not feel like, oh, I didn't think about that.
And to your point, let's have those conversations and thought processes before we're in a must submit an offer today situation, because it'll happen. In today's market, it may soften here in a second, but like, it's still if you want it, you better submit market. So you guys got to be ready. And I think that's great advice, is like, if you're working with a realtor, and maybe some of this stuff hasn't come up in conversations, maybe it's something you should go back to your realtor and just have a conversation with, like, hey, what about this? Or like, I don't feel like I'm prepped to make this decision. Like, how can you help me? And how can we have a conversation? Like, we're just here trying to provide information. Like, I want you guys, if you're thinking about moving into real estate or making a play, to take one nugget out of this that can help you get through that process. Or if you're not, maybe it moves you to want to. And if you are, maybe it moves you not to want to. One piece, that's all I need you to get. I think, Nick, you've done a good job of giving people a lot of tools and thought processes.
Yeah. And one thing I pride myself on is I provide, you use that word just now, we provide information. I provide, you decide. I don't need to fall in love with the house. You need to fall in love with the house. So it's a question I get from time to time is, Nick, what do you think about this house? It's like, leave me out of it. I'm not moving in it. What do you think about it for your family?
Love that. So we're kind of coming up on time. So I like to switch and I like to talk about like lessons you've learned, and I like to make sure we're hitting that business audience as well. So I want to ask about sports. So give us the quick rundown on your sport history, because you've had some success in sports. So tell us about that briefly.
Sure. Grew up playing soccer my whole life. Had opportunities to play abroad. Played in Brazil for a short time. Then went from player, finished playing in college, became a coach and director really seamlessly based on my circumstances where I was living. Found myself then coordinating trips abroad for others and took groups to Europe, took groups to Brazil as well, stayed in touch with people there, and did that for 16 years, specifically in the soccer space. And came out in 2015, was able to get my foot in the door in really what is the mecca for youth soccer, being Southern California. Got my foot in the door, started off with one team, grew to 3 teams within a month, and then found myself in a director role within 6 months and grew into become a director of an academy program on the girls side before I made the shift into real estate. So that's a snapshot of where I've been and the last 16 years within that space.
Love that. So I got to ask the question because I love hiring athletes. I love working with athletes. What did being an athlete teach you or equip you with to do what you're doing today?
2 things come to mind. One, the discipline of the willingness and understanding the payoff of waking up early and being dedicated to what you do. I think though the 6 a.m. trainings when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, it's like, oh, it's like I'm a morning person. So I maybe that stemmed from it, but I love waking up and it's not hard for me to just get after it in the mornings. And as you know, for a lot of people, it's like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a real estate agent. I don't have to go to the office till 11. You know, it's like, that's for depending on you, me, and some others, it's like you might have got 8 hours in, 7 hours, 6 hours, whatever. So I think that discipline aspect for sure. And then as I became a director and was more responsible for not just the players, but also coaches, I loved, again, learning new things. And sports psychology was a massive area that I went down to educate myself, to then educate coaches and players and how that translates to a 12-year-old versus a 27-year-old coach. And I feel like that's been a massive thing for me for where I currently am, because mindset is such a big thing. How do you, when things aren't happening, 10 days, 15 days, are you still in it? Or have you just torn yourself apart up top, right? And now you're demotivated and now it's like, oh, nothing's happened. Like I really believe what we focus on expands. And if we focus on the negative, we're going to see a lot more negative. And if you focus and you choose, and by the way, that's a decision. If you choose to focus on the pieces that are going to make things start popping, things start opening up. So.
Love that. So looking at your younger self, what's a lesson you wish you'd learned sooner, or something you would tell your younger self?
Stay curious about as many things as possible. Be open to it. I think we close our minds off to can't do that. Don't know how to do that. And I think that creates a lot of unnecessary barriers.
Yeah, I got to let that sit there. I love that. That's man, that might be the takeaway from today, right? Is like, I love that idea of like, and we talked about it again offline, like that's something I've always had. Like, I'm so curious about people and their story and businesses and how stuff works. And like, I think that innate nature of being curious has profited so much in either looking at opportunities or taking the time to truly hear somebody, because I am curious and I'm not trying to just to promote or to push or to do something. So that's so valuable.
Yep.
So
yeah, I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just, go ahead. Yeah, give me a comment there.
One more nugget that's stuck with me is be more worried about being interested versus being interesting. And I can relate to that 100% because in most environments, I think this is a discussion for another day, introverts versus extroverts. Usually I find myself, I'll sit back and just observe and listen to people versus jump in and be like, this and that and this is my 2 cents. That's something that's always stuck with me though, when I am talking with someone, is be more worried about, again, being interested versus being interesting.
I love that. I think that's
a lot more.
That's a big message when ego gets involved. And I think if we're talking about athletes, especially if you were a star athlete, I think it's a lesson you need to learn. And I've seen it go the other way where like you're the star athlete and you're used to being the star. And then you start this career and you can still be the star, but you have to be the star by helping others succeed, right? Whether that's your client get across the finish line or a deal happen, that's how you become the star. You're not the star because you sit there and tell people how great you were, right? So there's an interesting play there where ego gets involved and it's another great lesson.
Yep.
So talk to me about education. So I always like to ask people, is there a book you would recommend or a podcast you'd recommend that someone should dive into?
Dang. So like I like reading. So that's a dangerous one for me. One that I'm not quite done with yet, 100% recommend The Adaptation Advantage. And talking about, again, the change in which technology, there are forces beyond yours and my control that are changing not just our industry, but our lifestyle as a whole. And there again, if people are unwilling to change, they're going to be really upset. And then you're blaming someone all the time versus putting the responsibility back on you to relearn something. And not just to relearn things, but to unlearn some things is just as important. Just because we've always done something one way, it doesn't mean it should be done that way all the time. And that becomes, I think, a skill set in and of its own, is our willingness, to be curious, but our willingness to say, just because I've done that all the time that way, it doesn't mean that's the best way. And so the adaptation advantage, I think, is an interesting one. Talks about the differences of what's the difference between being flexible and being adaptable. Being flexible, you're shifting one skill set to another skill set. Being adaptable, you're creating a whole new skill set. And I think this day and age, you have to be willing to do that. Otherwise, again, things are going to come and go. And you're going to be scratching your head saying, damn, where did everything go? Because it just went, a world just operated around me.
That's a cool book. I haven't heard that recommendation, so I appreciate that. And it sounds super interesting. And I know I sit on a board of a community college, and it's the whole conversation there, right? It's like, how do you reskill? How do you prepare? Because your job may just disappear, right? I mean, literally, like it may just go away. And so it's like, now how do I equip myself through a certificate, education, learning, trade, something to be positioned for a job? And then like, where's that sustainability level? So that's a great recommendation. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So any last words of advice, anything you want people to know here?
Last piece of advice. I mean, what I like to do personally is continue to find things maybe outside of your industry. I think that's an important thing. I think we all get in such a tunnel vision sometimes to say, I work in this space, I need to know all about it. Another interesting book is How Generalists Thrive in a World of Specialists. That was an interesting one. And to keep things broad, to keep things more broad versus so specific to what you do. I think we're all guilty of creating those echo chambers at times. It's so easy to hit a filter button on our social media, be like, I don't want to listen to Devin anymore. I don't want to listen to that person. Like, open up those horizons, because again, that's where opportunity lies. You're only minimizing your own opportunity by keeping things so specific all the time. So that would be a recommendation there.
Love that. What's the best way for someone to connect with you? Is there a platform you prefer? Is there a way that they should reach out?
Platform, I like to try to make myself available through Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I'm a person that checks my email. I'm not one of those that has 500 unseen emails, and all that information I feel like is pretty readily available out there. I put myself on those platforms, share my phone number. So yeah, I'm happy to talk with really anyone and everyone. So
love that. Well, Nick, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I know you've been grinding. I know you're out there hustling and doing some awesome stuff. So thank you for taking time to share some knowledge and to inspire and empower others. Appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you so much, Devin.